We all like to eat, but do you know what's in your food or even where it comes from? Shane Russo, your stained glass rebel here, and on today's Pondering Principle, we're going to talk about what the United Methodists social principles have to say about food justice and food safety. So let's get started. I'm going to start off by reading from the Social Principles, the United Methodist Book of Discipline, on what it says about food safety and food justice. On paragraph 160, part G, where it says food safety, it says this: "We support policies that protect the food supply and that ensure the public's right to know the content of the foods they are eating. We call for rigorous inspections and controls on the biological safety of all foodstuffs intended for human consumption. We urge independent testing for chemical residues in food and the removal from the market of foods contaminated with potentially hazardous levels of pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides, drug residues from animal antibiotics, steroids, or hormones, contaminants due to pollution that are carried by air, soil, or water from incinerator plants or other industrial operations. We call for clear labeling of all processed, genetically created, or genetically altered foods, with pre-market safety testing required. We oppose weakening the standards for organic foods. We call for policies that encourage and support a gradual transition to sustainable and organic agriculture." And then in the following paragraph it says, "Food justice. We support policies that increase access to quality food, particularly for those with the fewest resources. We affirm local, sustainable, and small-scale agriculture opportunities that allow communities to feed themselves. We decry policies that make food inaccessible to the communities where it is grown and the farm workers involved in its growth." Wow, so that was a lot, but what really sticks out to me is this goes back. These are the final paragraphs that sum up the natural world section of the social principles. And what it really says to me is that we should be, and we are as United Methodists, concerned about where our food comes from, what is in our food, and how that relates to how we use the planet and how it impacts people and the animals and plants for that matter. We should know what's in our food. We should be able to make informed choices about what we're putting into our bodies. Now, in general, in our culture here in this country, we care very little about what's actually going into our bodies, and that's apparent by the amount of crap that is sold at a supermarket. It's like we want to know what's in it, but then we don't really care because we're going to eat it anyway because it tastes good. There is a direct connection between health and what we eat. And the more crap we eat, the more crap we're going to feel. One of the things that I learned when going through the gastric bypass process was to always check the labels of everything you eat. And honestly, the fewer things that are on the ingredients portion of the label, the better. You could call that eating whole foods or whatever, but the reality is we should know what we're eating. And the food justice part, we support policies that increase access to quality foods, particularly for those with the fewest resources. This might seem obvious to those of us who are listening who are on the lower end of the economic spectrum, but healthy food costs more. Healthy food costs a lot more. It's easy to eat poorly when you are poor because that food, for whatever reason, is so much cheaper. And so United Methodists in the social principles right here say that we want to support policies. We encourage and support policies that increase access to high quality food for those who have less of an ability to afford it. For me personally, what that looks like is I am a subscriber to a food service box that sells produce that would not be sold at a grocery store. It's ugly looking, it's imperfect, it just doesn't look the best, but it all tastes the same. So for me, and it's a lot cheaper than if I were to buy all of those same things at the store. That is one policy, one way to do that. I think teaching people, encouraging people to grow their own food is also another a huge thing that would be, because I personally cannot do that. I have tried to start gardens over and over again, and for whatever reason, I just am not good at it. So I think we have lost the ability, by and large, to be able to do that. Now, on the flip side of that is, if you are on the lower economic end of the spectrum, you probably have less time to be able to grow your own food, because honestly, you're probably working a ton to just make ends meet. So when do you have the time to grow a friggin' garden? I know that's true for a lot of my friends. They'd like to do that, but it's just not feasible. If you look at somebody who's homeless, or somebody who's renting, or somebody who's just struggling to make things happen, there's no way they're going to be able to provide their own food. So what we need to do as a culture is to encourage policies from the federal level on down that make high quality food more accessible to those, because the poorer you are, the poorer you eat, the poorer your health, and the higher your healthcare costs go. It's all together. So this isn't just about who eats what. It's about who eats what, how much does it cost, what is the overall cost to society when large chunks of our country are eating horribly because they can't afford to do anything else. So as United Methodists, we want to know, and we should know, what is in our food, and we should also be encouraging ways to have fruits and vegetables and just high quality foods accessible to the lower end of the economic spectrum. And for me, that just seems like a no-brainer on how to, love your neighbor as yourself. So that's today's short pondering principle. I don't really have a lot more to say about that, because it's not really that much of a controversial topic, to be honest with you. It's one of those things that I think all of us can agree on. We should all want to eat better. We should all know what's in our stuff, and we should all have better access to the high-quality foods. Next time, we're going to start getting into our social principles about community, about nurturing communities. Some of those topics are culture and identity, marriage, family, divorce, single people, men and women, human sexuality. Dun, dun, dun. We're going to get to human sexuality. Family violence and abuse, sex abuse, sexual harassment, abortion. Oh, man, we're going to get to some heavy hitters. Adoption, ministries with people who've had abortions, care for dying people, suicide. Oh man, we've got a lot to be going over through the next section of our social principles. So it's going to be interesting to see what we as United Methodists say we believe, and then how have we actually practiced that, or are we actually living that out? So I look forward to getting into those as we move on. If you liked this video or this podcast, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and share it. Share it out with your friends. And if you really like what's going on, what I'm doing, go to the blog, go to my Patreon account, which is patreon.com/stainedglassrebel, and give me a donation. That would be very, very much appreciated and helpful. So go ahead, take it easy, and I hope you have a good day.